Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdés, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdés.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdés, Valdés with an S, at Rich Valdés on all of the social media. Welcome to the Wednesday night edition of the program. Is it Wednesday? No, it's Tuesday. I don't know. Tuesday night. I don't even know what day it is. It's because they're shutting down the government. Anyway, I usually don't know what day it is. But I will tell you this. If you want to join the late night national town hall conversation, give me a call. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdés. And Schumer's shutdown is imminent. And I can tell you, listen, I know that Democrats, they don't like government shutdowns. They'll do it, but they don't like it. Because government's their thing. Right? They worship at the altar of big government. Now, I'm not one to give El Trompito advice. I think he's handling this well. He played the ultimate counter move and said, listen, you could shut this down all you want. If you do, FYI, we're laying off a lot of people. Good countermeasure. Thought it was a brilliant tactic. The only other thing I would do is just keep letting people know. Forget about just branding it as the Democrats shut down, Schumer shut down. That's all good. I would just very publicly say, hey, listen, guys, since the government's shut down, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here. If you need me, I'll be right here at 1600 Pennsylvania. Ready, willing, and able to make a deal when they're ready. But just know that for those of you that need the post office, that need the national parks, that need, etc., tomorrow and the next day and the next day, well, those of you who are in that position, FYI, talk to the Democrats, right? And, of course, they're going to turn around and say it's because it's the Republicans and the Republicans and the Republicans. And, listen, these are arguments that are as old as the day is long. What are you going to do? I don't care. I don't care. They could keep this government shut down for as long. You know what? I could wait it out way longer than any Democrat. That's the bottom line. Just let's see here. 22 hours ago, the White House put out a statement that there would be continuation of certain federal advisory committees. So obviously your Social Security checks will continue. Hospitals are not closing. Everything will continue in the government shutdown, maybe minus, the post office, perhaps, the national parks, the usual suspect, things that usually shut down on weekends. And I don't know about you, but I could live with that. And again, I'm not looking for it, right? But I've never met a shutdown I didn't like. That's just me, personally. Once you're in the position to wait it out, it loses its power, and they're forced to make a deal. You got a bunch of Democrats that want to make a deal already, but a bunch that don't. So they tanked the continuing resolution and, in effect, voted to shut down the government. So if there's any developments on that in the next 2 hours and 50 minutes, I will I'll bring you up to speed on whatever we got going on. Because why? Because we're live in that time frame, and as the news breaks, you're going to hear it here first. Now, I wanted to get into something else because there's another big headline today. This government shutdown stuff is kind of like stealing the thunder of some of the amazing stuff that's going on in Washington. And the big thing I wanted to talk about was health care, right? There's a big health care measure today that I thought was, a lot more positive for Americans than for the government, right? And a lot better than this government shutdown stuff. But anyway, I'll move on. I'm trying to use my cheat notes here. Let me see here. Healthcare. We don't want the government shut down. That's not it. Mr. Good, if you have a healthcare clip, you can forward it to me. I'm trying to find it. Let me see if that's the one I'm looking for. Bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. The shutdown stuff has me a little bit. Yeah, here we go. This is the new initiative from the White House on prescription drugs. Pfizer coming in and slashing prices for Americans. And Dr. Oz had that announcement. Listen to this.
Do you want to give just a couple of words on that, Oz?
It's a historic day. For the first time, we've had the magnitude of give from the pharmaceutical industry. One of their leading lights, Alfred Beall and his company Pfizer, agreed, something the president has been pushing on since his first term, and he's been calling me quite frequently on speed dial over this term to make sure that Secretary Kennedy and I would seriously engage industry. They have agreed to several important concessions. First, we will have most favored nation drug pricing in this country for everyone on Medicaid. So our most vulnerable populations will not be forced to pay 3 times or more, 5, 6, 7 times more for the exact same pills in the same bottles as it costs in other countries. That'll make it a lot easier for governors to manage their budgets and shows, again, a distinct passion that the president has for helping people who are most vulnerable. We've also gotten all new drugs to be released in this country to be priced at most favored nation, which means by the end of the president's term, 95% of all pharmaceutical drugs in America will be at most favored nation pricing. Again, no more discrepancies between what folks in other countries can buy their drugs for and what's being purchased in this country. Pfizer also agreed, as will companies next week when they come to visit this same White House, to onshore drugs to bring their production back into America so American workers will benefit as well. But at the same time, this is critical. It allowed Pfizer, and we believe for other pharmaceutical companies, to maintain their innovative edge. We want America to continue to find cures like the ones that saved the lives of some of the children that I'm looking at right now. And those beautiful faces and smiles are here because American innovation was not dulled, not blunted, but we can solve that need and thread the needle by also making healthcare affordable so Americans no longer, including children like this, be forced to make a difficult choice between groceries and pharmaceuticals. And I must say, Mr. President, since this morning, if you just look at the stock market, there's been support of this decision made by the CEO of Pfizer. Their stock has benefited. So I think it was the right thing for the company, the right thing for the policies of this administration, which is a pretty cool place to work. But most importantly, it's the right thing for the American people.
Thank you very much. And maybe we'll just finish it off with Linda, because...
Now, again, this was some remarks that were given earlier today. And Dr. Oz mentioned in that speech, he mentioned little kids that are benefiting from this. And some of those little kids were in the White House. Let me tell you, remarkable. There were a bunch of kids there. One of them, actually, President Trump said, does anybody have anything they want to say? Would you like to make a comment or whatever? And one of the little girls, very small, in my opinion, looked like she was 7. I think she said she was 9. And she was the tallest one there, but she was a little girl. And how eloquent, how secure and confident she was in what she was saying. Beautiful remarks she gave about her own health. I'm not going to play them now. I'm going to play it a little bit later. But honestly, just a really beautiful clip. And if you've seen it, then you know what I'm talking about. If you've heard it, you know exactly what I mean. But I also want to talk about New York City, right? As you guys know, over the weekend, Mayor Adams dropped out. Wow, what a surprise. We've been talking about that for a while. Back when, I don't know, let me see, who was it? My friend Congressman Matt Gaetz and others were saying Sliwa has to drop out. A bunch of MAGA, right? A bunch of, I parted company with a bunch of my MAGA friends, and they said, there's no shot, this can't happen, that can't happen. Eric Adams is the only way forward. Right? Remember when MAGA was backing Eric Adams? Guess who dropped out? Eric Adams. Now, you know who ran against Zoran Mamdani and got trounced by Zoran Mamdani? Andrew Cuomo ran against him in the primary just, 5 months ago, 4 months ago, whatever that was. And he lost by 13 points. Now, who's within 4 or 5 points of Cuomo is the person who's never had a chance to face off against Zoran Mamdani. That's right, Curtis Sliwa. So Curtis Sliwa, in my opinion, the person who is the only candidate on that ticket in that election, the only candidate, not supporting sanctuary cities, not supporting the defunding of police, never supported the no cash bail law that Andrew Cuomo signed. It amazes me that there are some MAGA people out there saying, look, you want a communist or Cuomo? Because the other guy doesn't have a shot. Excuse me. This man, Cuomo, literally signed the no-cash bail law in New York, literally destroying the state. As governor, not only did he leave in disgrace because of his, as Curtis says, smacking fannies while he was killing grannies, right? He signed this executive order that cost the lives of many elderly people during COVID. This man is a disgrace with no gravitas in the Democrat Party. You think Republicans are going to push him over the top? You think the people that were with Adams are now going to be like, all right, I guess I'm with Cuomo? I don't know. I see them going with Sliwa a lot quicker than I see them going with this guy. Anyway, we're going to get into all of the crazy things that Zoran Mamdani has been talking about, and we're going to do that straight ahead with our guest from the Manhattan Institute. Daniel DiMartino joins us. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdés.
Last time you were on this program, you were unequivocal in saying you do not like capitalism. But Trump, just in those remarks there, I counted, called you a communist 8 times. Are you?
No. I'm a democratic socialist. I've said that time and again, and I think it reflects the fact that whereas that identity would have been enough for Donald Trump in the past, now he doesn't even want to use that because he knows that the message of my politics is one that is connecting with New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs. It's a message of dignity in each and every person's life. And what we're seeing in these clips and what we're seeing in what Donald Trump says is he's going through the many stages of grief. First, it's denial that this could ever take place. Now it's acceptance. And still through it all, he is looking to use every tool at his disposal to help Andrew Cuomo become the next mayor of the city.
That is Zoran Mamdani making the case that Trump is supporting Cuomo and that he's not a communist, but his policies might differ. I want to bring in our guest. Daniel DiMartino is a fellow at the Manhattan Institute and somebody that fled communist Venezuela. Daniel DiMartino, welcome, sir.
Thank you so much for having me, Rich.
You bet, brother. And let's get into this. I mean, it's going to be a wide-ranging interview about a lot of stuff. I know you have a lot of scholarship on this stuff and other items, and I want to get into all of it. But let's talk about, I guess, your initial thoughts, or so the audience can also understand your background, how you came to be very passionate about being against communism.
Well, it's because I lived it. I lived how Venezuela was transformed, initially democratically, by Hugo Chavez's socialist policies since I was born. I was born the same year he took power, and I lived for all of my life until I finished high school in Venezuela, and I came to America in 2016. And it was because inflation distorted the purchasing power, because shortages made life really hard of lining up, because blackouts affected my home every single week, because sometimes I went several days straight without water in my apartment, and I had to carry it upstairs 5 floors because we went from being a normal middle-class family like many American families are today to living like if we were in the 19th century in the third world. That's what happened to Venezuela. Despite having the largest oil reserves in the planet, now we have the largest refugee crisis in the planet.
That's remarkable. And again, this is all due to the structure of communism through a socialist government where the party in power and their cronies get everything and everybody else gets nothing. Is that right?
Well, what happened was that they just made a lot of things really free, right? You know, I mean, gasoline was free, the electricity that we got, the water that we got, obviously education and healthcare, public housing, and despite having so much money from oil, it was not enough to pay for all the goodies, and they just printed money and caused hyperinflation. In other places, they would have just gone bankrupt, but because they could print money, they just caused inflation. When prices went up, they just put price controls because prices go up because the rich are greedy. So we're going to tell you how much you can charge for bread in the grocery store. We're going to take over your grocery store. We're going to have a government grocery store. We're even going to have government restaurants because, you might know, but Venezuelans eat this food called arepas. This is very common. So we had government arepa shops. Let me tell you, those were not delicious arepas, okay? So
wow.
that is what happened to our country. And now we have Mamdani in New York City, who, by the way, he himself in an interview a few days ago with Jorge Ramos refused to call Maduro, the dictator of Venezuela, what he is, a dictator. He refused to call the dictator of Cuba a dictator. He said he doesn't know much about them, which we know he's lying because I've seen his own tweets from 10 years ago where he's praising Venezuela's elections as if they were great when they were rigged. So Mamdani is a liar. He actually supports these regimes, and he's trying to lie to the American public into voting for him.
Now, people are listening to this, and they're saying, now, hold on a second. Who is this Daniel DiMartino that comes from Venezuela, and why are you lying about my good friend Zoran Mamdani? To people that are skeptical about that, what do you say?
Well, I would encourage them to do several things. Number one, watch the interview he did with Jorge Ramos, who is a left-wing journalist, by the way, but who I highly respect because he has always stood against the dictatorships in our hemisphere. And also look up his tweets and just go on his Twitter page and type Venezuela Zoran Mamdani and then see what he said about Venezuela's elections in the past. Somebody who praised rigged elections. And then I encourage you to look at the platform of the Democratic Socialism of America, which is the organization that he was a part of, he's still a part of, and that endorsed him, that has all his platform. That platform includes, as he himself has said on tape, seizing all the means of production. That is fancy word for saying we want the government to own the factories and the office buildings and the restaurants and the grocery stores. His whole pilot program of a grocery store owned by the government is exactly the first step in that. His whole idea of not freezing the rents is so that the property owners can't pay property tax on their building and then they fall under government ownership so that people live in public housing. He has already said that's his plan. So none of this is secret.
And this is very similar to how the dictatorship took control of private property in Cuba during the Cuban Revolution.
Well, I think it's more clever, right? They're trying to do it within the American legal structure.
System.
If they prohibit you from raising rents, remember, 1/4 of New Yorkers live in rent-stabilized apartments. If they prohibit them from raising rents for 4 years, and perhaps for 8 if he gets reelected, they're not going to be able to pay with their existing rent their property tax liability. And then they're going to fall into government ownership when they fail to pay, like any other building. And Mamdani has said that when that happens, the government will become your landlord. This is straight out of the socialist playbook. Imagine having 1/4 of New Yorkers potentially living in public housing.
That was once private.
That was
outrageous.
once private.
Yeah.
It is massive
Daniel,
expropriation.
stand by one moment. I'm going to take a quick pause right here. We're going to come right back. Folks, we're coming back with Daniel DiMartino. He fled communist Venezuela. He's a fellow now at the Manhattan Institute in New York, and we're coming right back to discuss the dangers of rent stabilization and socialism in New York City. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdés.
Big fan. Your impact is really big. Honored to be here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
If they want the radical change, Charlie, I have an idea. Elect a Republican into the mayor's office there in New York City. You're going to get radical change. I mean, things have gone in such a bad direction, but when you look at the issues, as you just pointed out there, that New York City voters care about the most, crime and affordable living is really top of mind for people. You know, if you elect a socialist, I hate to break it to New York City residents, who wants to defund the police, crime and cost of living are going to go in the wrong direction. They're going to go the opposite way people want. We know that Mamdani wants to bring social workers in to replace cops. He wants to cut back the police budget in New York City. It's outrageous.
That is Lara Trump, the chair emeritus of the Republican Party, RNC, the daughter-in-law of President Trump, wife of Eric Trump. And Lara Trump saying, if you want radical change in New York City, elect a Republican, of which there happens to only be one on the ticket. Sounds like good advice to me. But she's talking about all the free stuff that Mamdani is talking about. Now, I want to bring our guest back in because he's got his finger on the pulse of everything going on. Daniel DiMartino is a fellow at the Manhattan Institute. He himself is Venezuelan, grew up in communism, fled that communism for the American dream, and he's here, and we're talking about this. And Daniel, I want you to hear Zoran Mamdani in his own words talking about the free bus plan and how that's going to cost $600 or $700 million. Listen to this.
Is it possible to make buses fast and free? I'd say the cost would be about $600-700 million, which is less than Andrew Cuomo gave to Elon Musk 1 year in tax breaks of $959 million. Showing people the context that we're in and building a coalition where they may not see themselves in me, perhaps, but they may see themselves in the best and the brightest that I'll hire to surround me in City Hall.
Now that is a big admission from him, because initially this was, it's free. Now it's $700 million. Daniel.
Well, you also have to think about who's going to benefit from this. What's going to happen to the buses? Number one, where's the money's going to come from? He hasn't said it. Maybe it's going to come from defunding the police, in which case I would rather pay for the bus than defund the police. Right. Now, imagine he magically gets the money from somewhere. Why would he give the buses for free when there's already a program of free busing for people who are very low income, or reduced fares for people who are low income? So this is just going to benefit people who are in the middle class or upper middle class who take the bus from certain parts of the city. Like, how are you benefiting the poorest New Yorkers? Why don't you just lower taxes for the poor? Because New York City has a very high city income tax that he actually wants to increase. So why doesn't he just lower taxes? Because this is all part of his plan of making everything for free. This is the basic socialist idea. The solution to something is always making it free.
Which obviously means making something more expensive somewhere.
And by the way, getting a lot of crazy people inside the bus, because if the fare is free, you're going to get a lot more troublemakers in the bus who are not going to be able to enter without having to pay, and making the experience worse for customers. And that is something that many candidates are not willing to say, but it's the truth, and it's something that especially the seniors who take the bus would really not like.
So let's talk about this. So far we've talked about if we get Mamdani and his plan, on display, we're going to freeze rents so that you can't keep up with the upkeep of your own property, eventually losing your property into foreclosure where the city takes over and it now becomes public housing. You lose your stuff, an actual transfer of ownership of private property from private individuals to the government to put whomever they want in that housing. Number one. Then you've got number two, this free busing, that's $600 or $700 million. Then you've got number three, he wants to defund the police and use social workers instead of using actual cops when there's a huge crime problem. Then you've got the social issues. He says he wants $100 million for illegal immigrant legal aid in the public school system, as well as $65 million to help kids in public school that may want to get sex change, gender reassignment surgery. And those are just the ones I can remember off the top of my head. How does a scenario like that benefit New Yorkers?
Well, the biggest fear I think people should have is that the main industries New York City depend on will have a great incentive to finally leave the city. They have great alternatives now that didn't exist in the 70s when New York City was very dangerous and bankrupt. Now, the New York Stock Exchange could move to Texas. The governor of Texas and the Texas industry is very much ramping up the Texas Stock Exchange. And what would happen if a big chunk of Wall Street suddenly moved to Dallas or to Houston? what would happen is not only would we lose those jobs and those tax revenue that comes from those workers and corporations, but you would also lose all the industries that depend around them, the restaurants, the delivery, everything. And the city would fall into bankruptcy. We wouldn't have enough money to pay for parks, for police, for trash. And then it would lead to a death spiral of more people leaving the city. So that is the big danger with Zoran Mamdani's proposals.
Why, from your estimation, are people taking any of these things seriously as if they're somehow good?
Well, number one, I think it's ignorance. I think a lot of people are very much deceived, have not been served well by the American education system, and they think that you can just make things free. That the reason we don't live better is because politicians have just chosen for us to live this way, and that's not true. I mean, if the solution to our problems was just printing money and making things free, don't you think that the entire world would have figured that out by now? That we would just be all living like rich people? And it's not, because that's not the case. We need to work, and people need to get off their couches. And all these people who are voting for Mamdani, by the way, who tend to be upper middle class and young, they don't understand this reality.
Yeah, and it's really a sad reality. Now, if we have these people that are ignorant, and we've got 37 or 36 days until Election Day, what do you think is the outcome? How do you see things on the ground from your perspective?
I think it's almost guaranteed that Mamdani is going to win. And it's just what it is. I'm not happy. I'm not happy about it, but I see it. I see all the people wearing his gear, especially young people, mostly young women who are not poor, and they're just excited for him. He has a great social media campaign. You have to understand, I don't think his appeal is actually about his proposals. I think Mamdani's appeal and success has come from his charisma and from his good use of social media. And if we had somebody who was conservative, who was pro-free enterprise, with the charisma and abilities in social media that Mamdani has, they would succeed just as much. And Argentina is the best example with Milei. Who do you think voted for Milei in Argentina, the libertarian conservative president? It was the youth. It was not the elderly. It was young people. It was actually people in the middle class, people who were poor too, across the income spectrum, because of his charisma. And that's what a conservative movement needs here.
Yeah. And now, I think that there, as it stands today, you look at the numbers and Mamdani wins today based on the current polling data. But I look at that and I think with the exit of Eric Adams, there's going to be a shift in voting. And whatever, he was only polling at 8%. So whatever support may have been there, which I don't think is really 8%, but let's just call it that. If it were that and it goes in one direction, and with Cuomo there as a spoiler, I don't believe, I guess what I'm positing to you is, I believe, like you said, and it was accurate, Mamdani ran a campaign smiling to no end, saying, I'm going to make New York City more affordable. I'm going to make New York City more affordable. I'm going to make New York City more affordable. So now the media, CNN, Jorge Ramos, so many different organizations are pushing back, saying, hey, hold on a second. You sound a lot like a Chavista. You sound a lot like a Castroite. Well, what's going on here? And my thinking is that he doesn't grow from where he was in the primary, but that somehow dissipates. Maybe that's a naive thought of mine. But with the three-way race and no need to get to 50% plus one, the highest vote getter is going to win with whatever percentage they get. I think that creates a pathway for a Republican victory with Curtis Sliwa. Your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts is that the reality is that he won the primary. He has the D next to his name. So in New York City, you have a lot of just traditional Democrat voters who just go to the polls and they just vote straight Democrat. And turnout in mayoral elections in New York City is very low. If this was a presidential year, there's no way Mamdani wins, in my opinion. But because it is not only an off-year election, but even off midterm, the turnout is going to be low. And he learned how to drive turnout up in the primary to even register people as Democrats to vote in the primary. Now it's going to be even easier to mobilize young people to vote for him. So I suspect he's going to win because of the youth vote again.
All right, well, we'll see
And
how it goes.
also remember, his opponents are also not the optimal opponents. Cuomo, terrible governor. I mean, thanks to him, we have the Beall law. We destroyed, the pandemic was terrible. So the corruption. And then Sliwa is not the most charismatic guy either.
Well, I think he is charismatic, but he just doesn't get enough airplay because he's the Republican candidate. I've seen reports where they say that it's a race between Eric Adams, Cuomo, and Mamdani, and they leave out the Republican. So I get that. He's just not getting the shine that he should get.
And look, Lara Trump was right. We need a new Giuliani in the city. We need somebody who will get tough on crime. It's what people want, especially in the most dangerous areas of the city. And for that, we need a charismatic leader that will persuade them to vote for them, no matter if that person has an R next to his name or not. We need somebody who will be tough on crime, somebody who will lower taxes, somebody who will allow more charter schools to be built in the city so that students have more choice. You know, in most Harlem schools, none of the students graduating from public high schools are proficient in reading or math. None.
Yeah.
So this is a total failure by government. Parents need to have choice there too.
No, I agree with you 100%. I'd say the only place we disagree is I think Curtis Sliwa has a better shot than a lot of people are giving him credit for, but that could be my own personal bias. So we'll see how it plays out. Daniel DiMartino, how do people find you and your work and follow you on social media?
Yeah, well, you can certainly follow me on X. It's just at Daniel DiMartino, and DiMartino is D-I all together. And then you can also look me up on the Manhattan Institute website. I research, issues on economics, immigration especially. I speak through YAF at college campuses. I have several events coming up for high school and college students. I'm going to UC Berkeley next week, actually, giving a speech. So you can find me everywhere.
All right. Well, let's make sure that people know that. Our listeners are all over the country. So folks in California, Daniel's going to be in your part of town. Make sure you go check him out. Daniel DiMartino. Check out DanielDiMartino.com. That's, again, like he said, DiMartino, D-I, DanielDiMartino.com. I want to thank you for being here, brother. I appreciate it, and we'll do it again real soon.
Thank you so much, Rich. Looking forward.
You bet. God bless. And amigos, the rest of your calls and more coming up straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdés with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdés with an S.
All right, amigos, Rich Valdés here with you all night long. 833-4-VALDEZ. Let me see. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Tom, Columbia, South Carolina, WXQL. QXL, excuse me. Go right ahead. Tom, please, go right ahead. No, line 3.
Hey, Mr. Valdez?
Yes, sir.
I got a list of benefits for electing Sliwa or consequences for Mamdani. It's about a minute long.
Go ahead.
Where do we go from here? Which is the way to steer? Advise Sliwa, not Mamdani. Unwise believe us, not commie. Fight for what's right, or blight becomes your plight. Get with believing reality, or get a feeding mentality. Rise above it and dream, or lies that covet and scheme. Values a decisive Christian ethic, or accuse with divisive derision rhetoric. A logical, a rational, a loyal civil official, or a radical, a fanatical, a liberal, cynical criminal. Seize the wisdom, or seizes freedom. Fills the bill, or wilts the will. Take the right turn, or fake slight concern. Boots stand stern, or loot and burn. It's do or die. Tonight is die. Vote Sliwa. See ya.
I like the end there. Tom, thank you very much, brother. I always appreciate your poems and your creativity, brother. God bless you, man. Thank you. And shout out to South Carolina. We're on a couple of news stations, and one of them is in South Carolina as well. So shout out to them as well. Upstate Red. And I want to continue. Where do we go? We go here to Albany, New York, WGDJ. Go right ahead, Bill.
Yes. I'm calling in reference to the next election down there in New York City. They say those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. And case can be seen in that candidate running for mayor down there. He's what you call a Democrat socialist, like Joseph Stalin. You know what I mean?
I love that.
And not only that, but I have 5 points to prove that history has a way of repeating itself. You take Moses and the Egyptians, Boulder, Colorado, and the Egyptians, Woodrow Wilson, Joe Biden. Both of their spouses were almost running the government. Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy, both were assassinated. Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump, attempted assassination. Sodom and Gomorrah, Democratic Party. To me, they both were the same. If you look at what Sodom and Gomorrah stood for, and you can write that on paper, put the Democratic Party right next, and they almost shake hands with each other. The Democratic Party is trying to tell you how to worship God with the Johnson Amendment. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. And this is literally, Bill, what they do is they have you worship at the altar of big government. And I wish I could stay here and hear the rest, but you're hitting the nail on the head. I always appreciate hearing from good New Yorkers like you. Bill in Albany, WGDJ, thank you, sir. You're right. Nobody should be supporting Mamdani. And amigos, I got to pause right here, but we're coming right back. Keep it locked.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue with your calls and more. Let us go to Steve calling us from Atlanta, Georgia, WGKA. Steve, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdés.
Thank you very much for taking my call, Mr. Valdés.
Yes, sir.
So I'd like to make a PSA, if you don't mind, to all of the Valdés Army that's out there who might be affiliated with TPUSA, Turning Point USA, and maybe know somebody over there. And then maybe you know somebody and shoot it up to management, ask them to shoot it up to management, whatever. Right now what they're trying to do, or what they are doing, is they're getting speakers to come out, like you, Bongino, all the famous podcasters, all the famous people, okay? All the famous people. We're trying to get them to come out to universities, and they're setting up on scheduling, I think once a year, twice a year, something like that, where they're physically there on the campus answering questions, doing what Charlie Kirk did, But immediately when this happened, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to have to transition. And I was thinking big screen, right? The students come out to the big field and they see the person who's answering their questions, and the person who's answering their questions, the famous podcaster. I was
right,
thinking,
and you're saying to do this for their safety?
Remotely, do
Steve,
it remotely.
is this to protect them from getting shot?
Exactly.
Yeah. The only way we have to show up, and that I don't think we can hide. Maybe a little bit of bulletproof glass, maybe a heightened security, more of a sweep, with roofs and stuff like that. But we can't show fear here. Steve in Atlanta, Georgia, God bless you, brother. I appreciate you. WGKA, amigos, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdés.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdés, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdés.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdés, Valdés with an S, at Rich Valdés on all of the social media. Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the program. We are live and national. Happy to be here with you. It's truly a blessing. 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and we continue the conversation. Here's what's going on. The government shutdown is imminent. The White House has declared the shutdown to be imminent after Chuck Schumer failed to get the Democrats in line with the bill that the Republicans put together. Senate failed to pass the funding bill. So at 11:59 p.m., the government will shut down. And that's coming from the Office of Management and Budget inside of the White House. There was a vote on that a little while ago. And here's what that sounded like. Check this out.
We're following breaking news, a live look now at the Senate floor where a bill to fund the government just failed, largely along party lines at 45 to 55. The bill did not get the 60 votes needed to pass. Senator Jerry Moran of Kansas was the first to speak after it failed. Let's take a listen to that.
For a second time, failed to pass a continuing resolution to allow the federal government to continue to operate. It's because we are coming to the end of the fiscal year. The appropriation bills have not all been approved, although almost all of them have been approved and brought to approved by the Senate committee.
Let's bring in.
So that's the latest on what's going on with the shutdown. Of course, President Trump making some comments on this as well a little while ago, earlier this evening. Listen to this.
President, if there is a shutdown, how many federal workers do you plan to lay off?
Well, we may do a lot, and that's only because of the Democrats. And as you know, they want to be able to take care of people that have come into our country illegally, and no system can handle that. And so we're totally opposed on that. But we can't take it. We just can't do it. I'd love to do everybody. I'd love to do the whole world. But our country can't handle people that come into our country illegally. And they want to give them full health care benefits. They want to open the wall again. Can you believe it? I can't even believe it. They want to open the wall. They haven't taken away boys playing in women's sports. They haven't done that. Men playing in women's sports. It's like they don't change. They lost an election in a landslide, and they don't change.
Well, Mr. President, I want to be the first to break it to you. Democrats don't change. Maybe he's more optimistic. He's definitely more learned than I am. But I'm not optimistic that Democrats change. I spend half my time arguing with Republicans who aren't on the same page, right? Let alone trying to get Democrats on the same page. But in fairness, President Trump has done plenty of that. So those are the president's comments from earlier today. And I got to tell you, I've said it before and I'll say it again. In the position, and not that I covet it, nor that would I ever do it. I don't think I would. I don't have what it takes. But if I were president, I'd say, listen, he handled it so much better than I would. I'd say, listen, anybody wants to talk about this, come by tomorrow because we're having a shutdown. So I'm going to order some pizzas. We're going to hang out in the Oval. And whatever you guys want to talk about, bring your kids. We'll give them a little tour. Oh, can't do a tour. There's no tour guides. But we'll talk about it tomorrow because it's going to be a little bit of a lighter day since there's going to be a lot of government business on hold. Now, Trump wouldn't say that because he's not the kind of the guy that takes days off. But I would play it up and say, look, the Democrats want to put everything on hold. Let's put it on hold and really paint that picture and let people know, look, this is the Democrats doing. All these wonderful government services you like, because you know what? At the end of the day, I don't rely on government services, really. And I guess that's a myopic and selfish view, right? Right? What about the old ladies? What about the old men? What about the sick kids? What about, yes, they're all going to get what they need. There's never been a government shutdown in history where some needy child or needy elderly person was denied care, where a hospital was closed because, the government shut down. No, maybe a funding cut, something like that, different story. But the government being shut down, no. The biggest issue there is that a big part of the Democrats' base are government workers, a.k.a. the swamp. So what happens? If the swamp isn't working, for a little bit they're okay because they get paid, I don't know, I'm going to venture and say, and it might be wrong, but I'd say probably 10 to 20% more than any of their private sector counterparts. And that may be conservative, but eventually that kicks in. Their lifestyle becomes impacted, and they're like, hold on a second. What do you mean I can't do this, that, and the other? What do you mean I might have to fight to get this money back? And now, what do you mean you're going to lay me off while oh, hold up. So that means you're not going to pay me. I can't get that retroactive money. This is why, they take these risks. They play these gambles. So now President Trump's going to go to town, right? And he told them, look, I will be doing this stuff. Go for it. Do what you got to do. He gave them every opportunity. He's outsmarting them. And I guess there's still a couple of hours. They have adjourned in the Senate, but you never know. Somebody might turn around and say, "Hey, listen, come on, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's try this one more time." I don't know if we're going to see that tonight, and if we do, I'll be the first one to tell you about it. But man, very interesting stuff happening in Washington with the Democrats pushing for a shutdown. I don't think this plays well for them. I think they're trying to sully Trump's name here. They're trying to tarnish him and say, well, remember when that government was shut down? Boy, that was Trump. I don't think the people, they don't have the control of the narrative that they need to pull that off. I think by and large, the American people, I just saw a poll a little while ago, 65% of Americans are not on board with the shutdown. That's an ugly number when you're playing a game like this. They have too much to lose. More upside for the Republicans. So I think it's a risky game, and I think ultimately they're going to be like, hold on a second. That's literally like the heroin addict going to the heroin dealers and saying, you know what? I'm not going to buy your drugs anymore. In fact, I'm not going to buy drugs at all. And walking away only to immediately go into withdrawal. And that's where they're going to be. I'd say in 2 hours when it becomes real, some of them are going to be like, oh, my gosh, what'd you guys do? Why did you talk like that to them? We're going to see how this plays out. But I don't think it's going to be a very long-lived, right? I think the longest one I've seen, at least in the last 10, 15 years, I think it was 21 days. And I might be wrong on that, but I think that's what I remember. And if you're listening to this right now and you're like, I don't even remember that, that's my point. These things don't matter. They're rather insignificant. They ultimately impact the swamp way more than they impact you or me. And for the people that want to make the case that it costs us more and this and that, no, I'm not buying it. Somebody once, I argued with a PhD once that it costs more to execute someone quickly rather than keep them on death row for 20 years. They said it was cheaper to keep them on death row and execute them later than it was to do it quickly. You do that math. I'm not doing that math because it's pretty clear to me. You take care of it now, you don't pay anymore. You take care of it in 20 years, you got 20 years worth of payments. It's that simple. Anyway, amigos, we're going to move on from this shutdown business while we keep our finger on the pulse. And we're going to talk about what the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, had to say today. Everybody thought that something huge was going down. Instead, they got a firm talking to from the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, saying, look, no more fat guys. You got to tighten this thing up. You got to meet the physical fitness standards. No more of that soft stuff. No more girly men, as Arnold would say. So we're going to talk about that with our buddy General Blaine Holt when we come back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdés.
This administration has done a great deal from day one to remove the social justice, politically correct, and toxic ideological garbage that had infected our department, to rip out the politics. No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. No more debris. As I've said before, and will say again, we are done with that. I've made it my mission to uproot the obvious distractions that made us less capable and less lethal. That said, the War Department requires the next step. Underneath the woke garbage is a deeper problem, and a more important problem that we are fixing and fixing fast. Common sense is back at the White House.
Common sense is back at the White House. We're done with that bleep, says the secretary. Tough words. And again, this is the largest gathering that most people have seen. All my friends in conspiracy world were just blowing up my phone. This is it. This is it. The military's taking over. He's calling them all into D.C. 10 days of darkness, all this stuff. And just to say, hey, we are expecting you to meet physical fitness standards. And I think it's great. I'm not trying to downplay that. If anything, I'm downplaying my friends who enjoy the funny videos. But I want to get into this with somebody who's had to talk that talk and walk that walk. He's been on plenty of times before. He's a friend of the program. He's a C-17 commander, pilot, senior Newsmax contributor. He's a podcast host now as well. He's got a good podcast. He's going to tell us all about it. And he's a retired Brigadier General in the United States Air Force. Blaine Holt, welcome back, sir.
Hey, it's great to return with you, and what a happy day for our nation. We pay over $1 trillion a year in defense dollars, and we're going to now take the nonsense out of that, hopefully.
Yeah, listen, I love it. I love everything Pete Hegseth said. I think these are things that are important. They're the things that matter to a lot of people when I'm trying to have a good time, getting a tan on my toes in Miami, right, with a really cool drink in my hand. I do that with the safety and security of knowing I'm in the country with the biggest and best military in the world. And in recent years, that got, it became called into question, at least in my mind. And that started, I think, with President Obama creating a militarized system for people to go into the military to become transgender, and Biden kind of continuing that and not making it any better. So this is a real big shift, General.
It really is, and it does. Actually, it goes back as far as the Clinton administration when they started to shape the promotion systems. And we started seeing nepotism creep into the performance reports, where putting bombs on target became important, but also important. Did you run the Wings air show? Did you find yourself being the executive officer to the big colonel? And what Pete's doing today, what the Secretary of War is doing today, is saying enough. We're going straight meritocracy. You will be the best pilot in your squadron if you want to get promoted, and you better be good on your PT stuff too. And I get how the PT thing really resonates with a lot of people, up and down, but there's so much more in what he said. Basically, the Secretary came in today and he said, this culture is changing right now today. It's not just a rebranding with the Department of War. It's that we're going to cast away the county options and the science fairs of climate change and all this other garbage. And there's a lot of people in that room today don't know a darn thing about warfighting. And they become overbloated. So the next step that we're going to see is we're going to see some of them get cut back. And I thought the Secretary did such an elegant job of really having being humble and offering not to humiliate people, but to say, hey, look, you might not agree with this direction shift for the department, and you've given 30 years, 35 years of your life to this. We're not going to embarrass you or humiliate you. We're going to say, we'll celebrate your service, but go ahead and resign honorably, and we'll wish you well. And if it's not going to be the case, if you can't meet the 1990 standards that the Secretary spoke of, well, then we're going to find a different way to say goodbye to you. But the department's changing, and our focus and our priorities of America's security are also going to change with that.
Do you think that this is, I would imagine, because there's organizations that literally have been advocating for this type of moment for years. I would imagine this is a welcomed message, at least in the veteran community, and I would suppose in the active duty community as well. Your thoughts?
It is. There will be some who really grabbed on to the Obama and the Biden administration's politicization of the departments. They understood a system where they could rise if they said, spoke, and did the right things and said the right things about diversity. And so now we're going to change back to basics and the meritocracy. Those are the people, and there are quite a few of them, that will be very disgruntled. They'll file hurt feelings reports, and we'll get on with it. But the nice thing about the Defense Department is when it does correct itself, and we've seen this throughout history, it does so pretty smartly. General Marshall, pre-World War II, fired 150 generals to get their attention and whipped that department into shape. And him and Henry Stimson went after it. And this is a message to our adversaries. Our adversaries see this stuff. They know our military history better than most Americans do.
Sure.
And this is a deterrent for them to say, oh, America's going to be serious now. Well, let's pay attention here.
Yeah, and that was my next question, and I guess I'll ask it this way. For the global community, adversaries, partners, just everybody who's looking, and I think if you're paying attention in life and you're running a different country, you've got to look at the U.S. all the time, right? You just got to see how we're moving. Mm-hmm. And when you say, oh, wow, these guys are, revamping, cleaning up shop in the DOD, Department of War, this is, I think it sends a message. Is it naive of me or wrong of me to think it's a strong message? Do you think it's received like that by China, Russia, Iran? Or do they look at this and go, these are arrogant Americans. Now they're up to some other crazy thing like, you got to be fit?
No, I think they'll take this one seriously. We're already, even in our pudgy selves, we're still the world's best military, technology aided, of course. And we have the best minds. I can't tell you how many general officers and admirals that I've served with, amazing colonels, amazing non-commissioned officers, chiefs, who really their minds are just incredible, and that's what makes us a lethal fighting force. And look what the Secretary did today. He encouraged risk taking. He said we're not going to be a one mistake military anymore. We're not going to have to try to pretend to have perfect records. If you made a whopper, then we're going to learn from that, put some dirt in it, and move on. And that's the type of warrior ethos culture that you want. And you know what's going to happen at NATO? Because I've worked there for a long time. NATO's going to fall in line and start to emulate us. So when we set the standard with our leadership, they're going to want to be us, and that makes everybody stronger in the alliance.
Outstanding, General. I want you to stick with me. I want to ask you a couple of more questions about your thoughts on another story that I think is interesting. There's a story that broke today about the candidate for governor, Congresswoman, who might have been, I don't know, like a varsity blues scandal with her own kids in a military academy. Keep it locked right here, folks. We're coming right back with Brigadier General Blaine Holt, retired from the United States Air Force, and me, Rich Valdés.
You have experience and skills in interviewing, or you wouldn't be on your program.
America at Night with Rich Valdés.
Mikie Sherrill has made her military service as a Navy helicopter pilot part of her campaign. But now the Democrat is reacting after it was uncovered that she was caught up in a cheating scandal at the U.S. Naval Academy, saying, quote, "When I was an undergraduate at the Naval Academy, I didn't turn in some of my classmates, so I didn't walk, but graduated and was commissioned as an officer in the U.S. Navy, serving for nearly 10 years with the highest level of distinction and honor." Political analyst Micah Rasmussen says that speaks volumes.
She was not ever in trouble for having cheated on the test. It was a question of whether or not she turned in people she knew who did see the test.
But Chitterelli's campaign in a statement saying the admission she was, quote, "implicated in and punished for her involvement in the largest cheating and honor code scandal in the history of the United States Navy is both stunning and deeply disturbing. In a separate incident, documents which were also obtained by CBS News appear to show Sherrill's military records almost completely unredacted. Chitterelli's campaign tells us it never used those documents for any wrongful purpose, but Democrats are calling for an investigation.
So in addition to that, you've got this woman, Mikie Sherrill. She's a congresswoman from New Jersey running for governor of New Jersey. She's now under scrutiny because her two children have been accepted into the highly competitive Naval Academy as well, and they got in. So the question is now, what are the chances that all three of them got in? So I figured I'm going to talk to a guy who's a general, and his brother's a general too. General Blaine Holt, welcome back. Talk to me about this and how, what you think about this whole scandal here.
Yeah, so when she was a cadet, the problem is it's not just that she did not cheat. That's fine. But the honor code is, I will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate anyone who does. And that's what they zapped her for. And that's when a standard was a very different standard. One that, Secretary Hegseth was talking about today, that we're going straight to those standards. And that's what the future looks like. Well, here we are. She's in a political campaign, hotly contested. I guess if you're going to tell me New Jersey politics are messy, there's no shock on that one. It's like there's gambling in the casino. But the big deal is that I do think there should be more scrutiny because the academies all launch big careers. Now, I'm not an academy graduate, but the academies launch big careers. And so with everything politicized, why wouldn't the Democrats look to run the tables and fill up the service academies with as many as they possibly could to shape the force for later? You've got to be very careful about how and where these people come from. And if it is nepotism, which might be the case, and I say might be the case in the case of her two kids getting nominations and appointments, that has to be looked into. That's part of what Hegseth is getting at. We've got to have an apolitical force. And America depends on that. I can't wake up knowing I'm a conservative American, and if there's a Democrat in the White House, that I'm in danger. I can't be that way. So we have to have an apolitical force. That's what this is really all about. And if she needs to face more scrutiny, well, then so be it. That we as Americans want transparency.
Yeah, and I think the scrutiny really comes from they're saying this Naval Academy has a 9% admissions rate. And the fact that her and her two kids all got in there is just uncanny. But again, if it is the case, and kudos to all of them, right? Godspeed. It seems interesting. And again, like you said, when it comes from New Jersey, you got to ask a lot of questions because things are kind of shady around here. So,
that's one congressional district and over 24 appointments in just one congressional district. These are not big classes. They're less than 1,000 per service academy. Right. So that's a whopper amount of kids in one service year for where Cory Booker works.
Good old Cory Booker. Anyway,
good old Cory Booker.
Yeah, he's a heck of a nice guy, despite everything. Let me get into a new topic here, which is yesterday. President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu gave this joint press conference, and seemingly to me, and again, maybe I'm just becoming immune to this stuff, but I feel like I heard stuff there that I hadn't heard before, kind of the mechanics of the plan for peace. And And more than anything, it sounded to me like a real line in the sand. In the past, I've heard Trump say, we need the hostages, we need them now, 3-4 days, 72 hours. I've heard so much of this, and he's been so graceful with Hamas. But I feel that this was the real deal, if there is such a thing. I really feel like we're about to see some ugly stuff happen in Gaza should these hostages not come home. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is a big deal. I think an underreported big deal just because the news cycle's been crazy. But this is a major plan that the president has pulled off. And it wasn't very, I wasn't nearly as worried about Hamas as I was worried about Prime Minister Netanyahu. You know, that press conference hit 2 hours late. I'm sure there was a very heated discussion, and Ambassador Witkoff and Jared Kushner worked with him on Sunday as well. But hey, he's acquiesced. And the big news is the Arab states have also said we're signing on to this. But that means that whether Hamas accepts this and does it the easy way, or they do it the hard way and say we're not accepting this, and then they just have to kill them out of their hideouts, this deal is going to be the deal, regardless. And the other part is Hamas won't have a life support system. There'll be no money flowing in. The Arab states will turn against them. They've already agreed to. And so, look, I think this is a masterstroke. Either way, this is what it's going to be. And either way, this is going to be the first president, I believe, who has brought peace to the Middle East.
Yeah, well, he's already that guy, right? With the Abraham Accords, and he's going to do it again.
Yep.
Trump out-Trumping himself. And, General, I want to talk about your podcast. You've got a podcast that you've done. I heard a voiceover for it, and I said, I know that voice. That's the voice of General Blaine Holt. And it was great to hear you on the podcast. Talk to me about, tell all of us, what's it called and what you're discussing.
Sure. So I'm running a little bit of an independent project. I'm learning just how hard putting together a podcast is, but it's called Dangerous Intellectuals. It's a once a week audio only. And what I promise is we'll go over a range of topics, not just geopolitics, but economics, technology, entrepreneurship, science, art, music. But in every case, the common denominator is that guest is not only an out-of-the-box thinker. They don't even know a box exists. They will call balls and strikes. They will be there to, flaunt the mainstream or conventionality, and we'll go into a deep conversation, hopefully with some new knowledge learned, some new angles, some new insights that nobody had before on a particular topic. I kicked off with my first guest, Tom Luongo, who's a master strategist and economist. And, we went all over the place, but in every case, we, I think, got the listener to a new set of understandings about how layered these fights in this hybrid warfare environment globally and here at home that we find ourselves in.
Well, outstanding. I wish you good luck. And if it's any consolation, I'm sure that if I tried to be a general, I would fail abysmally. So don't beat yourself up if you're having trouble with podcasting.
Okay. Okay.
All right. And let everybody know how they can subscribe to the show and how they keep in touch with you.
Sure. Come to Twitter, and the Twitter handle is @DangerThinking. And if you can catch Dangerous Intellectuals on Spotify, Podbean, other platforms will open up. I'm always at Newsmax. You can find me there. And I have an insiders page where I write my column. And, I appreciate you giving me that chance, because I want to just say I really appreciate all the support that I've gotten. And it's just been amazing. And I love the chance to be on your show.
Well, thank you, General. We love having you on. Godspeed to you. You are a dangerous intellectual. And I mean that in a good way. And I appreciate you being here tonight. Good luck with everything. God bless.
God bless.
All right, amigos. We come back to your calls, questions, and comments straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Rich Valdés, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
Trump about the New York mayoral race, which we've been talking about all morning. He said self-proclaimed New York City communist Zoran Mamdani, who's running for mayor, will prove to be one of the best things to ever happen to our great Republican Party. He's going to have problems with Washington like no mayor in the history of our once great city. Remember, he needs the money from me as president in order to fulfill all of his fake communist promises. He won't be getting any of it. So what's the point of voting for him? This ideology has failed always for thousands of years. It will fail again, and that's guaranteed. President DJT issuing a warning to New Yorkers this morning.
Now, that comes on the heels of the announcement from Lara Trump on Fox and Friends this Saturday morning, saying that, well, you know what? It's a pretty short clip. I think let's just play it for the audience to hear, Mr. Good, that Lara Trump clip, excuse me. All right. Well, as you get it ready. But Lara Trump making the announcement that the president of the United States, that the mayor of the city of New York ought to be a Republican if New York residents want to see change. Listen to this.
They want the radical change, Charlie. I have an idea. Elect a Republican into the mayor's office there in New York City. You're going to get radical change. I mean, things have gone in such a bad direction, but when you look at the issues, as you just pointed out there, that New York City voters care about the most, crime and affordable living is really top of mind for people. You know, if you elect a socialist, I hate to break it to New York City residents, who wants to defund the police, crime and cost of living are going to go in the wrong direction. They're going to go the opposite way people want. We know that Mamdani wants to bring social workers in to replace cops. He wants to cut back the police budget in New York City. It's outrageous. It's crazy. But what?
So that is, again, Lara Trump, and making it clear. You want to see radical change in New York, elect a Republican to the mayor's office in New York City. There is only one Republican on the ticket. It's Curtis Sliwa. Now, for whatever reason, maybe it's people don't know him. I know he's not getting a lot of airtime. I've played reports on this program where the media just omit him as if he's not there. And it's not because he's not polling well, because he's polling nearly neck and neck with Cuomo, a former governor. So here you have a guy who's been a radio person locally in New York City in the 5 boroughs, and the CEO of a safety patrol organization that spans, honestly, the globe. They have chapters all over the world. Versus a guy whose dad was governor. He was a cabinet member to Clinton, and then he became governor, right? One of the most well-known Democrats in New York, political royalty, Andrew Cuomo. His brother's been on CNN for years. Now he's on News Nation. The Cuomos are known for being big Democrats, and they're well known. And he's within, I don't know, striking distance for sure of Curtis Sliwa. I think the last poll I saw had Curtis at 19%, had Governor Cuomo at 22% or something close to that. So and again, not that I don't put a lot of faith in the polls. Why? Well, because I believe Hillary Clinton was ahead by 30 points or some crazy number like that. She was beating Trump by 30 points back in 2016. We all know Trump won that election. Who else? They gave a raw deal to. Oh, the last Republican mayor, right? Bloomberg got in because I think of the effort that was, the groundwork laid by Rudy Giuliani. But let's talk about Rudy Giuliani. It wasn't like Rudy Giuliani just showed up and said, hey, look, I was a very successful prosecutor. I took down the mob. And guess what? I'm going to run for mayor and you guys are going to elect me. Well, he said that. And you know what happened? He lost. And Giuliani ran a second time. And you know what? He lost. And Giuliani ran a third time and he won. So imagine if it took Rudy Giuliani, when crime was terrible, when he was taking down the mob, he took on organized crime in Colombia, right? He was the United States attorney for the, whichever district, the Southern District. I think it was the Southern District. And he took on FARC, La Fuerza Armada Revolucionaria Colombiana, right? FARC. And these were terrorists. I mean, they had threats on his life. So imagine that. Rudy Giuliani running for mayor in his hometown. He's a Brooklyn kid, and he doesn't win. Runs again, he doesn't win. Runs a third time, he finally gets in. He beats Dinkins, who was a horrible mayor, in my opinion. And here we are giving Curtis Sliwa slack because he ran once before? I mean, come on. Let's just be fair here. Now, I comment on things online every now and again, and one of the things I made a comment somewhere, somebody was saying some candidate, and I said, look, I know who I'm supporting. I'm supporting the guy that was born in New York City. There's a guy from Miami that's running for mayor. He's not even polling, I think, at even 0.5%. That's why you haven't heard about him. But they were promoting him in this post. And I commented on it that I am supporting the guy that was born in New York City. That's been protecting it for 46 years. Curtis Sliwa for mayor. And I don't know, it's gotten like 1,100 likes or something like that on Instagram. And what's interesting to me, though, is every now and again the comments come in, and I can't respond to all of them, but the majority, 90% of these comments are like, me too, thanks, thumbs up, everybody's on board with Curtis. But there's a handful of people that are all saying the same exact thing. He's really nice. I like Curtis, but he can't win. Curtis is a heck of a guy, but he's got no path to victory. You just want to hand it over to the socialists because that's what's going to happen if you vote for Curtis. Now, I understand political campaigning. I've done this before. But that's all that is rhetoric. This is not some sort of foregone conclusion. How on earth can anyone? You can have your opinion, sure. I had a guest on a little while ago, and you'll hear from Daniel Martino. He said he thinks that Zoran Mamdani is going to win. And I think that's, again, why? Because he was born in Venezuela. And he didn't grow up in New York. He doesn't know the impact that Curtis Sliwa has. And I think you have to have an understanding of that. There's a sleeper cell factor here. There are people that are going to come out. Now, listen, it's my belief that Curtis Sliwa is going to win and become the next mayor of the city of New York. That's truly my belief. And why? Because a few months ago, I was, again, swimming upstream all by myself, while many of my MAGA colleagues were saying, look, he's got to get out of the way. He's got to get out of the way. He's got to drop out of the race so that Adams can win. And guess what? Adams ended up dropping out, and Curtis is still there. And he's raised more money than Adams and Cuomo combined. So with the millions of dollars in his war chest, he's ready to go into this campaign with 7 campaign headquarters offices throughout the 5 boroughs. Not too shabby. I'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
What's up, America? I am Rich Valdés, and I'm back. All right, to the phones we go. Let's go to Frank, Evergreen, Montana. Go right ahead, sir.
Hi, Rich.
Hey.
I want to tell you about my trip to Scotland. It was a drought this year, and the veggies are not as abundant in the UK, and also Ireland this year was kind of very sparse also, and the grass is not as green. It's been 5 years in a row in Scotland, and now this is unusual for Ireland, but it's to the point where in London, England, they're starting to eat horses just out of choice. It's out back on the menu. It's just that.
What are you blaming the drought on? What do you think that's all about?
Probably social farms that just went awry. They don't know how to do it right. They don't know how to harvest the crops effectively as the original farmers.
Yeah, could be. I don't know. Frank, very interesting stuff. I'm going to look into that during the break. KOFI in the building, Evergreen, Montana. Amigos, we're coming back. The rest of your calls and more. Hasta la próxima. I'm Rich Valdés. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdés, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdés.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdés, Valdés with an S, at Rich Valdés on all of the social media. Welcome to yet another hour of our program. Blessed and happy to be here with you guys. The phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES. If you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, I'm looking forward to speaking with you. And I want to get into a couple of things. Part of what we've been discussing earlier is the military shaping up again, literally getting people back into shape, making sure we're all a bunch of rock-ribbed, hard-bodied men. And again, I think that's a good thing. Those of you who listen to this program know that I used to eat everything in sight. I used to weigh 270 pounds, and I was the happiest near 300-pound guy you'd know. And one day it just dawned on me, after my doctor read me the Riot Act, I had to lose weight. So I did. And I lost weight, but I wasn't a rock-ribbed, hard-bodied man like my dad. And I thought, man, I'm kind of flabby. So I said, let me start going to the gym. And I'm not necessarily Mr. Olympia today, but I do resistance training. I lift weights. I do some calisthenics. I do some cardio. You know, sometimes I take a week off and get lazy and get soft again, but I go back at it and hit it again. And the key is to build it into lifestyle, right? And for those of you who do that, good for you. For me, this is something that happened in my late 40s. Never cared much for fitness before that. So I say all of that to say, you know, from start to finish, I dropped, I think, probably a total of 80 pounds. And I got down to like 190 pounds, 185. And I'm probably now hovering close to 195 or 200. But the point of my story is all of us need to be that guy again, right? There was a time where manufacturing was really big in our country, where men had to do a lot of physical labor, and that doesn't mean they don't have to now, but there's an option to do other types of jobs now, right? You could sit in a chair and talk on a microphone, like me. You could drive a truck. You could do a lot of things where you're not necessarily out there, lifting something or doing the type of harder manual labor that was once required of a lot of men. Now, there's still plenty of that out there, but technology's made things a little bit easier, and that easier has made us a little bit softer. So hearing Secretary Hegseth talk about this today, I thought was great. And President Trump also weighed in on this, making some comments about the military, just kind of reminding them that they are our fighting force. And I think it's important, right? I can't remember too many times that I said, wow, that was a great speech that Biden gave today, with respect to the military. So kudos to El Trompito about that. And on that point. Now, we also have President Trump today in the Oval Office talking about the government shutdown being likely because Democrats want to give illegal health care to illegal aliens. Listen to this cut number 3. Check this out.
At this point, is a shutdown inevitable? And how would you describe the negotiations with Democrats yesterday? Are more meetings scheduled?
So nothing is inevitable, but I would say it's probably likely because they want to give health care to illegal immigrants, which will destroy health care for everybody else in our country. And I didn't see them bend even a little bit when I said we can't do that.
So President Trump was right. That was earlier today. And here we are with, 49 minutes to go. And that's it. The Senate has gone to recess. They've adjourned until tomorrow. They said they're going to be back at it at 10 a.m. tomorrow, October 1st. But they didn't meet their deadline. So as of tomorrow, the government will be shut down. And again, I think this is branded as Schumer's shutdown. And they should. The Democrats should own this, and they should keep it as long as they can. Because ultimately, I think it's they that suffer the biggest consequence of this, right? It's not really the Republicans or even the American people, in my opinion. There's not a lot that we're going to lose. It's really the government and those government employees. And I'm sure in that group, there's a few that'll call here and say, Rich, I like your show, but, I've spent my whole career in federal service, and I just really don't appreciate it when you talk so badly about government workers. Thank you, folks. I appreciate your call. What do you want me to tell you? I got to change my mind? No. I tried my hand at government service, and I realized it's not good. It wasn't good for me. It's not something that I enjoyed. And in reality, those who get their money from tax dollars are the ones that are going to suffer the most. That's the big deal here. And the majority of those people are beholden to the Democrats. They're part of the same ilk, if you will. So that's that. Next thing. There was another big topic today that I wanted to talk about. Some suspicious stuff in Utah right before a Turning Point USA event. I'll get to that in a little bit. Let me see. There was one more thing here I want to talk about. The shutdown. That happened. The woke military. That ended. And I wanted to get into something on Mr. Mamdani. And I've got a couple of clips on this, so just bear with me while I look on my cut list here to see which is the one that I want. And, of course, he's been out there saying he's not a communist and he's not this and he's not that. But Zoran Mamdani is really, he's skilled at what he does, right? Just keep smiling and keep saying the platitudes. Doesn't matter what they do. And when necessary, you bark like a dog, like a rabid dog, like he did with Tom Homan. I don't know if you've seen that video. He's screaming at the top of his lungs as if someone had offended his child, And otherwise, he smiles through everything. And I have a clip that I'm looking for. Haven't located it yet, but it is of Zoran Mamdani with Jorge Ramos and with a couple of other journalists. And they just keep asking him questions about, I think it's Kristen Welker from MSNBC. And she's saying, basically it's the same question, and, veiled a little differently each time. But they're saying, will you call out these regimes? Will you call them dictators? Will you say that they're autocrats or communists? And when he's pressed on a follow-up from Jorge Ramos, the Univision journalist, he literally says, I really don't know. No. He just plays dumb. And it's so disingenuous. But I would imagine that he thinks that works. And I guess it does, right? Because if you are with someone that believes in your ideology, you don't have to sell them on it. And if the person doesn't believe in it, then you just have to make it look like you don't know. But anyway, I think we've got the clip. Is that right, Mr. Good? All right, check this out.
I'm more than happy to answer whatever comes to your mind, because New York City deserves a leader that will not pick and choose the moments in which they are accountable to this public.
So today, do you agree with Mr. Netanyahu's statement that Hamas is a terror organization that needs to be destroyed?
My politics is built on a universality.
But do you think Nicolás Maduro is a dictator in Venezuela?
I think he has done many a horrible thing.
Do you condemn that phase, globalize the intifada, which a lot of people hear as a call to violence against Jews?
I don't believe that the role of the mayor is to police speech.
Do you think that Miguel Díaz-Canel in Cuba is a dictator?
I haven't thought much about Miguel Diaz.
For the people who care about the language and who feel really concerned by that phrase, why not just condemn it?
My concern is...
Yeah, but I wonder if you're reluctant to call them dictators in Cuba and Venezuela.
I'm not reluctant. I just haven't thought about them that often.
Say it! I am more than happy.
There you go. He says that he is more than happy, but he's really not, right? And I understand sometimes people don't want to take bait, right? And that's what that's not what he's doing here. What he's doing here is dodging the question because he doesn't want to answer it. Not because of anything other than he'd be on the record admitting it. And that's what he doesn't want to do. That's it. Now, sometimes people will bait you into things. And I get that. And you may not choose to not answer a question because they're trying to trap you somehow. This isn't that case. Everybody knows that Diaz-Canel and not Chavez, I always forget his name, Nicolás Maduro in Venezuela, are dictators. I mean, literally, I think everyone knows that. Now, anybody who disagrees with that premise, you are part of the problem, right? It's just like the people that say, look, Hamas are not terrorists, they're freedom fighters. Listen, number one, it's factually inaccurate. At least the United States has recognized them as terrorists. If you want to choose to look at them as freedom fighters, you can do that. But I've seen the videos. I've spoken with people on the ground. You've heard most of those conversations on this radio program. When people say that, I don't think that really happened. I don't think children were burned alive. I don't think old people were beaten. I mean, these people are living under rocks, and they're blinded by their own hatred. And I think that's what ends up happening here. So Zoran Mamdani is everything that you're hearing about him and so much more. He's afraid to answer these questions because he's afraid to get exposed 36 days before Election Day. But with God's help, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that all of the people in New York and all of the Americans across this great country, this beautiful bastion of liberty that we have, call all their friends and family and text them and harass them and tell them, listen, you can't vote for this guy and you got to get your neighbors to vote for Curtis Sliwa. Because this is literally, I would say this is probably the existential election for New York City. New York City is not in bad shape. I'd say it's on life support. Should Sliwa win, it doesn't mean that we're magically revived. It means you've got the best shot at someone reviving it, and he's the best person to revive it. But the damage, it's done. Between Eric Adams and Bill de Blasio, there's not much left of New York, and Mamdani will come and put that final nail in the coffin. So anyway, we're going to do more of that in a little bit. I also want to talk about some of the stuff that's going on. Trump had a big announcement on prescription drugs, on Americans saving money on that. We'll talk about that after the bottom of the hour. And straight ahead, I want to talk about artificial intelligence and big tech. Speaking of big tech, Trump had a big win, almost $25 million from Google. And I thought that was great news. So we'll talk about AI and technology coming up right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdés.
Meta isn't just building AI, it's now funding politics to protect it. According to Axios, Meta is pouring tens of millions into a new super PAC called the American Technology Excellence Project. Its mission? Block state-level laws that try to regulate artificial intelligence. And here's why it matters. Over 1,100 state tech bills have been introduced this year, and Meta argues that many of them are poorly written and could slow down the U.S. in the AI race with China. The PAC will also back politicians who openly support AI development and tech leadership. But there's a bigger tension here. Should AI regulation come from federal lawmakers, or should states be free to set their own guardrails? Advocates for regulation say Washington has failed to act, and states need to protect consumers and artists. Critics warn that a patchwork of 50 laws could strangle innovation. So what do you think? Should we let tech companies like Meta shape the rules, or should states have the power to step in?
So that is a big question. What is going on with Meta, and what role do states have? What role does the government have? Does this pose a national security issue, threat, problem? I want to get the answers to all of this stuff. from Mark Beall. Mark Beall was the policy director for AI at the United States Pentagon. He's a former tech executive, and he's president of government affairs at the AI Policy Network. Mark Beall, welcome.
Hey, good evening. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So you just heard this report about Meta. I'm sure you're up to speed on this news. What's your initial reaction to that? What's the impact?
Yeah, the impact is going to be, I think, quite significant, and it's not just Meta, by the way. It's Meta and a couple of other companies and organizations in the tech industry, like people associated with OpenAI, one of the big frontier AI companies, and a venture capital firm called A16Z. And so far, it looks like they've collectively have secured about between $150 and $200 million of financial pledges to basically make AI an issue in the midterm elections, and to basically oppose those lawmakers who might approach regulation with a little more of a heavy hand than they would prefer.
So, where's the I guess the downside here? Why should people be up in arms or supportive of something like this?
Yeah, this is a tough one. At the end of the day, what you're seeing right now is technology that's being developed that will become incredibly important for the future of the United States and the future of human civilization. And so there's a tremendous amount of excitement on one hand, and then anxiety on the other hand. And for, I would say, the last 20 years, the tech industry has gotten a bit of a free pass from Congress. It's avoided some what people might think about as onerous regulations, but it's also avoided regulations around certain issues that people today might wish they could have had. And so, looking right around the corner with something like AI, it's going to be a discussion on how it is that we balance the sort of the optimism and the anxieties that we get to the good policy approach. And the conversation in Washington on AI is actually quite new. It's still something that most people are kind of still grappling with. It's a technical issue. It's sort of difficult to understand what it means and what it can do and where it's headed. And as a result, the big sort of real first political fight actually happened during the context of the Big Beautiful Bill, where the United States Congress, some folks in Congress sought to impose a 10-year moratorium on the ability of states to govern this technology. And of course, many people on the left and the right reacted in a very negative way to that and said, no, wait a minute, Congress has not stepped in. Congress has not imposed any guardrails. And now you're going to ask the states to do nothing for 10 years, in which, by the way, 10 years in the lifeline of AI, that is an absolute eternity. And so, when the White House actually moved earlier this summer, to publish its AI plan and action plan to secure American dominance, the president gave a speech, and I think he sort of acknowledged that, look, it's not good for industry, for American competitiveness to have its industry subjected to this patchwork of thousands of different state laws. And on the other hand, the federal government needs to sort of step in and do its job and think about what the right federal policy should be. And so I think looking into the fall, the conversation at the policy level is going to be very much about what those guardrails need to look like and what deal can be struck. And then assuming that, maybe progress won't be happening this Congress, we'll look to the midterms, in which was when some of these PACs will start coming into play.
All right, well, we're going to continue that conversation about those PACs and what this AI money machine looks like straight ahead. Folks, we're coming right back with Mark Beall. Don't go anywhere.
No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdés.
Meta, Facebook's parent company, is pouring tens of millions of dollars into a new super PAC to stop the regulation of AI. Let's talk about it. A super PAC is a political group known as a political action committee. They're able to raise and spend money that is essentially unlimited money to sway elections. And it's big tech's favorite way to influence elections. They're calling it the American Technology Excellence Project. Very patriotic, eh? Axios is reporting that it'll be run by Republican veteran Brian Baker and Democratic firm Hilltop Public Solutions. And they have a joint mission to elect, quote, tech-friendly politicians from both parties. And Meta's VP of Policy, Brian Rice, even said that the PAC will, quote, support election of state candidates who embrace AI development and defend American tech leadership. The simple translation of this quote is, if you push back against them, they'll simply fund a different candidate, your opponent. They'll fund your opponent. Now, I'm pro-tech. I'm a firm believer that tech will make lives better, safer, and potentially even more creative. This super PAC is not about innovation. This is about corporations protecting their profits, doing so at the expense of human workers and consumers and even kids.
So there you have an extraordinarily long report on Meta launching this super PAC to stop the regulation of AI. And as our guest explained, it's not just Meta, there are others, but they probably are the biggest in the bunch. And this this creates concern for some, pause for others. I want to continue this conversation and really talk about the impact this is going to have at the state level. We talked about state houses and how this is going to affect policy at the statewide level, and what the current concerns are, because there's some polling on this, and does this thing backfire? So I want to continue the conversation with our guest. Mark Beall is the president of government affairs at the AI Policy Network, but before that, he was the very first AI policy director at the Pentagon, and then went on to the Department of Defense's Joint AI Center, and he became the senior advisor at the AI Policy Network. And now he's talking about all of these big issues right now. He's been in government, he's been in tech, and he's with us right now. Mark Beall, welcome back. Let's pick up where we left off. I think you set the stage really well with explaining what's happening here. Now, I guess let's go further, I guess, for people who are wondering, why do we want to stop the regulation of AI? I know that some people are concerned about deep fakes, and others are concerned that AI is going to replace every last person that works in many different jobs. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I guess on the risk side, you can kind of think about the current set of issues that people are dealing with right now, and I think you laid them out perfectly well. Around these sort of almost like Dr. Kevorkian AIs that are helping mentally ill children like commit suicide, like a really tragic new kind of phenomenon. Normally if you have control over your AI or your technology, it's not going off and persuading people to kill themselves against their will or against your will. So that's kind of one major issue. You mentioned the deep fakes and child sexually exploitative materials. There's been some discussions already about whether or not that's sort of constitutionally protected without it's like sort of like a victimless crime if you could have a whole bunch of video generated child sexually explicit materials. And that's I think most people would say that's probably not something we want to endorse as a society. And so that's obviously a big conversation. And then finally, I think there's a big question around musicians, content creators, artists, and what recompense they might have if they're put out of work as a result of this. And then, on the jobs front, I think there's been a very sort of kind of incoherent conversation where you have one camp saying, no, AI is it's going to be like every other technology. It's going to bring in way more jobs than it destroys, and like people will be better off on that. And then on the other hand, you have people saying, no, actually, it's going to leave people not just unemployed, it's going to leave us unemployable because the AIs will eventually become so capable that they'll simply become more cost effective to use than human beings. And then as a result, what's left for us? And so these are kind of the current discussion. And then you can kind of look around the corner and you see AI as it gets more and more and more powerful. You can imagine quite easily how it becomes very much a national security issue. These very powerful, AI scientists that can discover new chemical materials and biological breakthroughs that could be applied for both good reasons and for malign ones. And then to the point where you even have questions around whether or not human beings will maintain the ability to kind of steer and control a super intelligent general purpose AI system. So these are all kind of the things that are swirling around in the minds of the public and on the on Capitol Hill with policymakers. And then on the other side, you have the industry saying, look, guys, it's early days in this technology. If we move too quickly, and we're going to basically, we're going to kill off this industry before it really has a chance to thrive. And somewhere in the middle, I think, is the sort of the balance that we need to figure out as a nation.
All right. Well, Mark Beall, that's a good way of putting it, I guess. I think, I guess my question there, based on, your understanding of everything, is how much of this stuff boils down to, like legislative priorities that we have to make at the federal level, and do we get into a battle with state houses over is regulating AI a states' right thing, like a public utility almost, like the electric company or something like that, or is it something like the internet that I guess the federal government kind of has domain over? Who even makes the laws? Is it Congress or the state houses?
That's a great question. It's at the heart of this very debate right now, and it's very much unsettled. And it's even funny to interesting to watch the sort of the parties respond to this issue, because there isn't really that like sort of clear partisan ideas. And so you have this kind of wild west of things floating around. But, I think people make the argument very strongly that states ought to have a role. We have a federalist system, and, states traditionally have roles in things like consumer protection, the use of technology and law enforcement applications, things related to children and families. That's kind of like the sort of purview of the states. And of course, they can serve very effectively as laboratories of democracy. In fact, there was a recent, I think, a fairly comprehensive and arguably light touch regulatory bill on AI coming out of California, SB 1053. It's been lauded by many in industry and in some of the nonprofit worlds that are watching this issue. And I think some people even now in Congress are starting to look at that for some potential guidance on what might be done at the federal level. Then on the other hand, again, because AI is rapidly becoming very much a national security issue, that is clearly the role for the federal government, and it has some responsibilities and obligations to play in there. And so I think, looking for any kind of sweeping, we're going to say no states and no regulation at all at the state level, I think that's probably not going to happen. It doesn't seem to be in the cards. At the same time, Republicans in Congress traditionally don't like to regulate industry. They don't see government as an effective response to this. And so, there's lots of complicated feelings when it comes to this issue.
Yeah, it really is an interesting thing to look at, and to see where it's going to end up and how it's going to go. I would suppose because of the gravity of it, it's probably going to be somehow largely in the federal sphere, kind of like, the FTC and things like that. And, I guess individually, there'll be other issues that arise. And another thing I'm guessing, and, this is, I guess, more of a legal question, but this sounds like whatever laws we come up with, somebody's going to sue, and it's probably going to have to make its way through the Supreme Court until there's actually case law on it, because it's so new.
That's exactly right. In fact, there are two sets of lawsuits going on right now that could be very informative, and then one that just recently concluded with the legal settlement against the AI company Anthropic for $1.5 billion, where the judge ruled they had to repay the content, publishers or folks. Exactly. And so, and I think that's another kind of risk to this sort of the industry and the kind of public policy that we have on this issue, is that if we sort of sit back and let the courts adjudicate many of these big problems, that might not end up in an ideal situation. And so I think that sort of adds a little bit of urgency for how and when Congress decides it must act on something like this.
Now, moving back to something you said, and I guess where your background is most recently with the Pentagon, AI can be great for America, but it can have a lot of national security implications, like you mentioned, not the least of which is deep fakes that could come from foreign countries, as well as just technology that they make to kind of go after us in different ways. Let's talk about the risk of AI and how not only can our adversaries use it against us, but moreover, how we can use it to defend ourselves against our adversaries.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, we have to sort of start the conversation with how we're going to use and deploy this technology responsibly, but effectively, so that we can counter and safeguard, the core interests of our country and the security and safety of the public. And so, I think we're seeing a lot of, concerted bipartisan effort over the years to try to accelerate the adoption of AI in the government, in the national security enterprise, to help with things like, cyber defense, and threat detection and things like this. And so, unfortunately, though, the flip side is as the frontier of the science continues to progress, and AIs get better and better at fundamental research in different sort of scientific fields like biology. I think one of the very near-term national security issues that's going to be facing the country, the president's going to have to deal with, is as these AI systems can start to help complete novices engineer dangerous pathogens from materials they can buy sort of in the open market. And there's been a lot of research, including in the UK, on looking at this very topic and how these models can be used in this way. And of course, traditionally, these things can take a lot of money and resources and technical know-how. And as AI reduces the barrier to all of that, and these models become, sometimes even open sourced, there's going to be some temptation by some malign actor to try to build something potentially dangerous.
Right.
And the response to that is very, very difficult to kind of sort through.
Yeah, it makes sense. There's so many unknowns there, so I appreciate you covering a lot of wide ground here. Mark Beall, President of Government Affairs at the AI Policy Network, former Pentagon AI Policy Director. I want to thank you for being with us. Let everybody know how they find you, how they follow you, your website, your handle, and anything else they need to know.
Sure, yes. Thanks so much. We're the AI Policy Network, the AIPN.org. Thanks so much, Rich.
You got it, brother. Godspeed to you. And amigos, we're coming right back with your calls. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdés with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdés with an S.
All right, let's go to the phones. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. Open phone. America is an age-honored tradition on this program, a time-honored tradition, dates back longer than I've been around, and popularized by Larry King, continued by Jim Bohannon. Again, just giants in the broadcasting business. It's my honor to continue that tradition with you guys each night. 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. And I want to go to Antonio. Antonio is calling us from Canada, WVMT out of Vermont. Go right ahead.
Rich, thanks a million for giving me the chance to speak tonight, because I hear Mamdani and I hear the Democratic left, and I differentiate between liberals and leftists. But the liberal left in the Democratic Party has become leftists. And I take this back to Aristotle, Cicero, Locke, and all of the great thinkers from the time of the 4th century BC, because we believed at the time in the Enlightenment period in private property, because private property was able to forward wealth forward in time and to develop some type of wealth-based society where the Enlightenment was the generated product of wealth. And wealth at the time was considered a good thing, not a bad thing. But today, the left believes that accumulation of wealth is a negative thing, and that not just a negative thing, but it should be dismissed, and that we should be publicly owned in every facet of society. So what is the Communist Manifesto? Marx said it's the elimination of private property. So if we believe in the elimination of private property, where our society in the West has been based upon this since Aristotle in the 4th century BC, then that means we should eliminate the United States as a society which is based on the principles established 4,000 years ago. So unless Aristotle, Cicero, Locke, and all of these great thinkers were wrong, including the founders of your country and other people that have believed in this system, then capitalism produced the Enlightenment and produced the wealth that has generated the forward movement of society that we enjoy today. So why would you, in the Democratic Party of 2025, want to go backwards into a failed system of communism where you want to eliminate private property? How do you pass on wealth if you don't have private property? If you have a family and you believe in tradition and you believe in man and wife having a family, or whatever your concept is, you want to pass it on to someone.
Yeah, the problem, Tony, is that they don't really care for that because they believe in the power of the state. So, they dismiss de Tocqueville, they dismiss Montesquieu, they dismiss the ideas of liberty, and they embrace the idea of collectivism. And in doing so, they feel that if the state is redistributing this wealth, if the state is, for all intent and purpose, your daddy, then voila, we've fixed all problems. And daddy can figure out who's going to eat today, who isn't, who gets a good steak, and who gets that piece of chicken bone with very little chicken meat on it. And ultimately, that's what happens, right? And the ability to either print money or continue taking others' property, right? That's the main reason. If you don't have your own private property, it becomes property of the state. And whether it's by saying that you're treasonous or, some other type of crime against the state where the state could come and take away your property, or what they're doing in New York by technicality, right? If Mamdani gets elected, he says, we will tax you into oblivion, put a tax lien on you, and then we'll own your property eventually. So it is a sinister plot. I agree with everything you said. This is the Communist Manifesto at work. If you haven't read it, you should read Das Kapital as well. You need to read Marx to understand where this stuff is going, and it's not going anywhere good. Tony, thanks for the history lesson. I appreciate you, brother. Shout out to all of our Canadian listeners. And amigos, I'm coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdés here with you, keeping you company. Let's go to Yolanda. Yolanda is in East Hartford, Connecticut on WDRC on line 2. Lock it in. Go right ahead, Yolanda. You're on with Rich Valdés.
Yep. Hi, Rich. I like you. I respect you. My question is, this Mamdani guy, where was he born?
Uganda.
Well, what are we doing having that we have politicians running for office, public and political, in the U.S. of A. that aren't even American born?
Yeah, well, honestly, I think it's there's a lot. There's many of them, right? The only one that has to be born in the United States is president, vice president. But outside of that, there's no rule on that in Congress or anywhere else. So, people are, that's why you have Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and, some others. That's the way the laws are written. So if we don't want that, then we'd have to, first start with a question like yours. And then the next step would be to take action and to, create a campaign and raise money and say, hey, we need a law. And we're going to lobby a congressman to make sure that we get this law passed. And we want to make sure that the American-born Citizens in Government Act is passed. And, like any other law, it's going to face its challenges. But I think it could get passed, and you might be the right person for it. So start raising money, and maybe you should run for office. Yolanda, thank you so much for your call. East Hartford, Connecticut, WRDC in the building. And, amigos, that's a wrap for me this hour. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night, and God bless you, America. Some of you, I'm coming right back. For others, this is the end of the road. Either way, I'm Rich Valdés. God bless you. God bless America.